I felt like really emotional because I was like, I really want to see entrepreneurship through. I know it's capable of so much more. I want to be able to just, put my brain behind powering this and see how it looks and what happens. And so I called my mom and my mom was like, just quit. And I'm like, what? Just quit my job? Like, what? She didn't even hesitate. She's like, just quit. And she's like, it'll all work itself out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of NanaTalks, the podcast where we are connecting businesses and funding. And today I have a pleasure and honor speaking to Monica Fullerton. She is CEO and founder of Spousely. That's the marketplace where you can shop and support from military and first responders businesses. Welcome, and hello, Monica.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Of course, that's amazing. I do remember the first time I've seen your couple posts on LinkedIn, and I was like, wow, I really need to connect with this woman. She's doing amazing stuff. And every time I'm speaking to the entrepreneurs, the first question I really like to ask is, if you do remember it, that moment of the transition or the decision when you basically decided to switch from the, well, I can say, pretty confident and calm enterprise life to being an entrepreneur, which definitely isn't calm.
Oh, it's such a smooth transition. I mean, everybody just wakes up every morning and you're like, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and it's going to be perfect. Just kidding. So I like to keep it honest, fun, and real. So let's see. So basically, the idea of Spousely came to mind when I was in a car ride going to dinner with a few fellow military spouses. And I just remember being in that car ride alone thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much talent in this one car. There's a photographer, a spouse that makes coffee, a private investigator, and then me, the business lover of all things business, always helping other people start, grow, scale businesses. And in that moment, I was like, I have to do something, which led me to creating Spousely, obviously. But the biggest thing, it really wasn't getting going on Spousely. It was more so exactly what you said. How did you know when it was time to basically kind of go all in on the business and truly become an entrepreneur that was living and breathing the business to help it scale and grow? And so I was very lucky. I had a great corporate career, making a really great salary. Stability was great. Met so many wonderful people throughout my journey. And it was really hard because I just remember having I was at my breaking point, basically. I just remember waking up one morning. I think I dropped the twins off at school and I was just crying. I felt like really emotional because I was like, I really want to see entrepreneurship through. I know it's capable of so much more. I want to be able to just, put my brain behind powering this and see how it looks and what happens. And so I called my mom and my mom was like, just quit. And I'm like, what? Just quit my job? Like, what? She didn't even hesitate. She's like, just quit. And she's like, it'll all work itself out. And I'm like, that's not a light decision. And anyways, to speed up kind of the journey on that, it really has stemmed everything that has kind of led me to where I'm at on my entrepreneurial journey is that we don't know what we don't know. And there's so many unknown things and unexpected turning points on the journey that we're like, we have to be willing to take a risk to get to the next stage. So, kind of long-winded answer to your question, but it was in 2021. So I was about a year into Spousely.
Oh, wow. So you started as a Spousely somewhere right at the very beginning of COVID or in the middle of COVID?
Yes, literally right before COVID. Great timing. Woo, I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, Spousely launched in January of 2020, and then obviously everything started to pick up throughout the following months. But It really was a blessing in disguise because even though COVID like was a continuous uphill battle for Spousely and many other, business owners, it also allowed us to kind of reevaluate what matters most to us. And with Spousely being a mission driven platform, it allowed us to really connect those mission driven consumers to what we were building.
Yeah, you had built already such an amazing community. And I do remember when we previously talked, you mentioned that for you, that was very, very important to make sure that your community members will not simply be a part of yet another marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Yet another Etsy, you name it, Amazon or whatever. They're going to be able to join the community. So how did
Yes.
you came up with this idea of the community?
Yeah, so I'm pretty big on no need to reinvent the wheel, but you can find ways to make things better. And so I actually was an Etsy seller in my college days. I owned a small business with my mother-in-law. And honestly, my favorite part about Etsy was the community aspect. Etsy was just really getting started, and there was just so much excitement around supporting one another and like learning from each other. And, as Etsy became a bigger company, I personally felt like it lost a lot of that community piece. But I remember from being a small business owner myself that that was my true like passion outside of creating the products that we were creating. I absolutely loved meeting other business owners and helping each other spread the word. So that kind of all stemmed from my thought of, oh my gosh, I have to bring all of these incredible makers, creators, and entrepreneurs together on a platform like Spousely. But I really want to leverage the power of community and what we're able to do together. So I always say, I might be a solopreneur on Spousely, but at the end of the day, Spousely is powered by a truly incredible community, and all of us have continued to roll up our sleeves and help one another grow.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And by the way, solopreneur, like pros and cons over there, because it when we're talking about from the perspective of the IT bubble, right? That's my like bubble.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear that none of the like huge accelerator or VC
Yep.
or like any investor will invest in solopreneur because there is like risks are way too high and most probably you will not be able to make it. But
Yes.
within the last 2 maybe 3 years, I can see more and more and more solopreneurs, and especially female solopreneurs.
Yep.
So for you, like, what are the pros and cons of being solopreneur?
Yeah, so I was living and breathing that mentality when I was about a year into Spousely. I started realizing like, oh my, because I was getting involved more in like, pitch competitions and talking to potential investors and adding advisors to Spousely, like all the things that you see other companies doing. And you think, oh, this is a playbook. I have to follow this playbook if I want to be a successful startup. And some of the requirements that a lot of these accelerators and different opportunities for first time founders to get a part of really pitch hard on exactly what you said. Like, you need a co-founder, are you a technical founder, who does this, who does that, like all these things. Are you all in, or are you working a job? And there's just so much pressure around, like, you have to fit in this mold or else nobody will help you or nobody will look at you. And in all honesty, I decided to just continue fighting the good fight and doing my thing, because I was thinking to myself, well, I've already come so far. I can continue just going because I have the power of our community by my side. And I might, like I said, be a solopreneur, but I'm really not alone. But I will say my biggest challenge has been just when it comes to being able to collaborate and lean on someone else that can help make those hard decisions. That's been extremely challenging for me. I wish I would have brought somebody along for the ride from the start, whether it was maybe putting a COO in place, or someone that maybe a CTO, someone that really was also invested in Spousely's mission and what we were building. Just because entrepreneurship is lonely, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. Even if you're a founder, a co-founder, or anything like that. I mean, entrepreneurship is a constant roller coaster. You go on the highs, you go on the lows. Like you're upside down, you're dangling your hands in the air. You just never know. You never know what you're going to get. Um, and I will say, I
Yeah.
think that's been my biggest challenge is being a leader that really embraces just honesty and sharing all of those real ups and downs without being a leader though that seems weak. And I think that that's kind of a fine line that's been really hard for me is I've been nothing but real and honest on this journey. I've pitched on many stages, I've talked on many platforms, like, and everything that I've done is I've shared the real and honest ups and downs of my journey. And so there is a bit of a fine line in that is as a leader and as a CEO and as a founder of your company, you're expected to know everything, it kind of feels like. But at the end of the day, oftentimes we just kind of got started. We had an idea, we got started. That doesn't immediately mean that you're an expert in all the different areas. You quickly become an expert in all the different areas for the
You
most
don't have
part,
other options, right?
but you don't have other options. And I think that's something that not enough founders are talking about. And I think, I want to see more successful founders sharing the real throughout their journey versus waiting until they feel like they've hit the multi-million growth number and now they can go and share, because that doesn't help anybody. It helps founders who are following along on the journey. Like for you, I'm so excited that I met you at the early stage of your journey, because now there's so much that I can share with you, like any other founder, and you can share with us that, like, you just complement one another. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree here with you. And I've never had a lot of faith in, success stories about success. Because in
overnight
most
success.
cases, not necessarily overnight, but again, successful success, like, oh, we did this and that, and then, within the, like, I don't know, 5 years, we make it happen. Now we're unicorn. But, you know, in most cases, well, first of all, folks are tend to sugarcoat a lot of stuff and things, and
Yep.
secondly, um, they do not even sometimes remember all the downs, all the setbacks. They
Right.
do remember success, and they would love to share these success stories. But the
Right.
best moments to learn are basically setbacks, right?
Yes.
To figure out how you can deal with that, how you can keep going. Because I mean, you've created amazing community, but I'm sure that that wasn't easy. That you
Yeah.
had your hard days and nights when you had to figure out how to deal with that, right? How to deal with the, I don't know, first negative feedback,
Yeah.
how to deal with the first drop from your platform, how to deal with the frustrated customer or frustrated vendor. And I'm sure that you figured your way. But since nobody, or the very, very small amount of people and founders are ready to share these stories,
Yes.
ready to share their setbacks,
Yep.
you have to learn everything on your own, even though we could share it,
Yeah.
right? And it's nothing bad in making mistakes. That's the only way how you can learn. I
Yep.
do not know, and honestly, I don't believe that there is any other way
Yeah.
other than just keep going, make mistakes, not even try to be perfect. You definitely won't be perfect.
No.
That's like just
Perfection is not key.
impossible.
Yeah. And I will say, looking back at all that we've accomplished and continue to accomplish, I feel like, exactly like you said, I've learned the most from my failures, from those challenges. And there's such key, like, golden nuggets that just allows you to keep building and growing, whether it's in that business or it's in another company or it's in your next venture, no matter what it might be. There's just so many great things that come from putting yourself out there and really facing the unknown. I'm really big about a quote that I've been living and breathing on this journey, and I try to say it on every podcast, every interview that I've done over the past 5 years is growth begins when comfort ends. And I want to continue stressing that message with everything that I do, because it's so important to hear that and, like, fully understand it. Like, we can say all the quotes, we can spit all the inspiration to one another, but, like, really understanding that is something that is beyond true for the entrepreneur space. So really putting yourself out there, taking control and taking all of the nuggets from those different mistakes and bumps that you hit.
Yeah, absolutely. There is quite difference between just saying something and truly
Yeah.
living with this idea in your mind. So do you remember your first negative feedback or the first vendor who told you, you know what, I just sorry, not working for me?
Yeah, so obviously with a multi-vendor marketplace, we get lots of different feedback, a lot of great feedback, and also some not so great feedback. But at the end of the day, it's the not so great feedback that I absolutely love when people take the time to reach out and send an email and say, "Hey, I haven't gotten any sales on Spousely. I really want to be a part of the community, but like I need to know what I could be doing better or how maybe somebody can help me because I want to stay, but I'm not getting sales or oh, your tech platform doesn't have this capability. I really, really would love for it to have this." And, there's an ongoing wish list and roadmap, as we all know. But at the end of the day, it's the people that are willing. And even though sometimes, more people are willing to share negative feedback than positive feedback, and that's just kind of how it works in business. But at the end of the day, it's the people that stand up and are willing to share any feedback in general are those that really are helping a company more than they know. Even if it's negative feedback, like them taking the time to put that feedback together is a wonderful opportunity for more growth to continue happening as those improvements can be made. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's appropriate ways to do it and inappropriate ways to do it, just
Absolutely.
as we all know. But for anybody that has had a business or has known somebody with a business, knows there's so much that goes into it, and there's only so much that you see from the front facing side of it. So I always am very grateful that if we do ever receive negative feedback, for the most part, everybody's been super honest and open of sending us an email to our team and just saying, "Hey, have you thought about this?" Or "I'm not getting this. Can you do this?" And I'm like, that's wonderful. Like, thank you for sending it to us, to our team, so we can address it with you.
Yes, absolutely. I do remember Alaska, Fairbanks, for sure. I've seen this like phrase before, but like that moment when you're entering that restaurant, which has the vibe of the gold rush in the
Uh-huh.
middle of nowhere, like, 20 miles away from even Fairbanks. And that
Yeah.
was this phrase that, like, if you like us, go and say the word to others. If you don't like us, come and explain that to us. And
Yeah.
this is so important because basically that's the way how you can become better. But we tend to forget, I don't know, that's the human nature most probably, right? We tend to
Yeah.
forget all the positive moments in our lives. I do remember when I was like, my son was a bit younger and I was trying to help him to figure out what can be done better. So we had this like the whole list of all the pluses and minuses over
Yeah.
day. And at first that was fulfilled with the minuses. And then I started to realize that it's not about him,
Yeah.
acting badly. That's about me, that I don't see positive things
Hmm.
or I'm just not paying attention to them. Oh, you
Right.
just clean up your dishes. Well, okay, yeah, that's like normal. But it
Right.
isn't normal for him. He's still learning. So this
Yes.
is positive. And when I start deliberately paid more attention,
Yeah.
I figure out that the whole day was fulfilled with both sides.
I love
And
that. That's a great way to look at it.
thank you. So I assume that, and when we're talking about business, doesn't really matter which area of our life
Right.
it can be applied, right? That we tend to see more the like all the downs rather than ups. I know that for me, every time when I'm getting the like negative feedback or some question, I do not have an answer. I'm still like, it gives me creeps. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know the answer. Oh my God, how
Yeah.
dare I should know it better. And then I'm wasting huge amount of time just going through these emotions
Yes.
instead of trying to figure out, okay, so what's the answer then?
Yeah.
Like, you're
Yeah.
gonna need to figure that out at the end of the day, one way or another. So while you're wasting time and
Right.
going through all of these emotions, which definitely will not help you to become better. And I have
Yeah.
to constantly remind myself that that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right to make mistakes. That's all right that you are not motivated every day, super enthusiastic. I shouldn't and I cannot wake up every morning like
Yeah.
being happy, right? And like, oh, woohoo, I'm
Yeah.
a founder.
But
No.
that's not reality. So
Well, yeah, but that's what social media in most cases are selling us, right?
it's
When
like
we're
the movie Barbie. It makes us we look all like we're oh hi Barbie, let me just go and do this. It's
right.
really it's not like that. And I think any founder, any entrepreneur knows that, and we all have gone through so many similar ups and downs. So I think that's a huge takeaway is anytime that there's a negative, try to find the positive. If there's a positive, think about what the opposite is and how you could potentially get in front of something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so getting back to the idea of the marketplace, as they say, marketplace, if built correctly, can turn into a money printing machine. All the unicorns at the end of the day, if you will take a look, are marketplaces at some way or another. Uber,
Right.
Airbnb, you name it, right?
Yeah.
It's mostly about connecting two different sides. But on
Yes.
the other hand, that's one of the hardest type
Yes.
of the company to be built. Comparing to B2B SaaS, right?
Yeah.
Business to business software as a service, which is basically, piece of pie
Yes. It's
comparing to
much
marketplace.
different industry. Yeah.
Yes, and it is much easier because you do not need to take care of three different things at the same
Correct.
time, right? One side of the platform, another side of the platform, and the platform by itself.
Correct.
So, how did you build the like vendor side? More or less, I figured, right, based on the amazing community
Yep.
and the opportunity, first of all, to learn and to support. But how did you build successfully the other side of the platform, the side of the supporters who are not getting that much of the support and communication and collaboration?
Yes. So, what we've found very early on in the journey is that our vendors are also our customers. Our customers are also our vendors, which is really, really special and super incredible. Now, obviously, that's not the case all the time, but a good percent of one or the other always feeds into the other side of the marketplace. So, even if it's a vendor that maybe has a neighbor that doesn't have a small business, now they're going to become a customer, and maybe in a year from now that neighbor is going to consider, oh, I want to start a small business. Now they'll know where they can come and sell. So it's like word of mouth has been super, super powerful. I will say, on the marketplace front of scaling and growing, it's definitely been the hardest thing I've ever done. I feel like now that I have done it, I feel like I can pretty much do anything, like any industry, anything. Like, honestly, like, besides the finance world, I don't like that world. That's not my jam, numbers. But I feel like no matter where our success continues to head or where we get stuck and where we need to go, because we are not a $1 million company, and we're not a multi-million-dollar company, and we don't have a budget from as a multi-million-dollar company does. But what we do have is a very, very incredible community, and it's up to us to continue figuring out how can we keep providing value to those vendors so that they want to tell a customer, and how can we provide enough value on the marketplace that that customer maybe also wants to become a vendor one day or wants to purchase on Spousely. So no matter what, even though it's a double-sided sword, I always talk about, I feel like it's a balancing act. And I feel like for us, as long as we can continue to help our vendors from a genuine community growth, business growth standpoint, everything else will continue to fall into place. Now, I wish I could sit here and say I wish it already has fallen into place more on the consumer side. But really, at the end of the day, if you look under the hood of many companies, that's a pain point for all different industries. You have to just constantly, be on, and you have to have marketing, and you have to be balancing all different areas of the business. But I do believe our vendors are our customers are our vendors.
Yeah, that's super, I'd say, luxurious place to be, because you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Not all the marketplaces can basically allow themselves to go toward that goal, which is
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, in your case, that's absolutely amazing that you can empower your community from both sides.
Yeah.
But like, I do remember that you mentioned that financial isn't your jam, but you're a
No.
founder, so
Yeah.
like you have to know your numbers. And I was
Yeah.
wondering, like, how did you figure out what's going to be the financial model for you? Like, how you figure out how you will start to make money
Yeah.
out of the business, the marketplace, and community you're building? Because at the
Yep.
end of the day, you're a for-profit
Yeah.
company.
So I basically took what other marketplaces are doing and I kind of mirrored their same approach, but we have reduced fees because at the end of the day, without having a budget like other marketplaces, we're literally all building from the ground up together. And so basically that means there's gonna be lots of times where people are not gonna get sales. So I needed to make the platform as reasonably priced as possible. And for me, it's really not about what we're charging the community, it's about what we can do together. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously, we have a lot of vendors that are doing very well, and it's really starting to build up with diversifying to other vendors. But from a marketplace growth standpoint, we definitely need to figure out some other avenues or make adjustments into ways that we can continue scaling as a marketplace. Because what's so beautiful about Spousely's business model is the more Spousely grows, the more our vendors directly grow. The more our vendors grow, the more Spousely grows. And there's really not that many businesses out there besides marketplaces that can say that they are directly putting funds back into the pockets of our nation's heroes, because oftentimes it's, X amount of money has to be allocated towards this, but we've really built an engine that allows, people to literally help and support those that give so much on a daily basis by supporting their businesses. So I do stand by, we have a lot of growth opportunities. I think from my standpoint, I'm a little stuck, not gonna lie, just because I do not want to charge our community more, but I also we have a lot of costs in terms of we're a C-Corp and we've got all of these business expenses, but the platform's very low maintenance because I've obviously poured everything into getting it to that point. But we have to find more other revenue driving opportunities that can then continue to help our community grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel you here, because I also have the marketplace, right? But for me, it's a little bit easier since my marketplace connected to the financial side of a business.
Yep.
I'm nerd, like I'm all about numbers, and in most cases, that's going to be ones and zeros. So
Yeah.
like, it is a little bit easier for me because, like, well, again, that's pros and cons, right?
Right.
I'm more on the side of the numbers. I'm more on the side of it, like everything connected to financials and technical side. But
Right.
I'm absolute mm, bad on the side of sales and marketing. I just, for me, that was my uh, well, big deal to go out there and start to talk to people and
Right.
share with them. Because for me, it's like, well, it's working, it's good, it's providing what you're looking for. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
Shush, go
Yeah.
for it. And there was like, but why you don't like it? Like, what does it mean you don't understand it? Like, I've
Yeah.
just explained to you. Come on, right? So
That's so
I'm
funny.
absolutely bad at that. But yeah, I feel you that it is very important to figure out every time the new and new ways how you can generate that revenue, how you generate that basically value, and then connect these two dots,
Yeah.
value to your revenue, with the proper explanation to your community, right? That's
Right.
this price over value,
Yeah.
and that's not easy to do, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I think where it really stems from though, as a founder, is once you've had a year under your belt or 2 years, however long it takes, it's super important to understand your strengths and your weaknesses because that also can be a huge wall to your continued success if you don't figure that out sooner. And for me, like I said, I've never been a numbers person. I don't like that piece of business. I absolutely love the genuine community, communications, and marketing piece. That's my jam. Like, I get so excited about that piece, and I if I could just focus only on that piece, that'd be amazing. But obviously, you know, we wear many hats as founders, and I think that's where I've continued to feel stuck on like the next steps of Spousely's true growth is, okay, if I need help really taking that number and turning it into this and building out all these areas, like it's time for me to potentially, have somebody else that can handle that piece, because it's not, there's no point in wearing all the hats if there's a hat that can be worn by somebody else and you guys can work together. So
Yeah, so basically that's where we are getting back to the question of advisors you can bring to your board, right? And ask them to help you with the spheres you're not super great at, right?
yeah.
You mentioned that you were a C Corp and that you started to think about advisors. So from your perspective, like how do you see advisors, especially when we were talking about um, from the perspective of putting them into your board or maybe sharing some equity? So like what's your idea around that?
Yeah, so I personally have mixed feelings about it. Once again, going back to what I talked about early on with when you become a founder, you instantly feel like there's this like founder mold box that you have to fit into. And for me, I felt like I had to get a board of advisors right away when I launched Spousely. And that's just what I saw other founders doing. I knew that it was something that has brought them great success and everything. So I immediately added my advisors on very early, and they've been super wonderful. But at the same time, I made those decisions very, very early on in the company, whereas it would have been really cool to continue maybe adding one advisor every year or something, because you meet so many great people along the way and everybody has such great insight versus immediately assuming like, okay, these are the people that I need for all of this, because you don't know what you don't know. And for me, I thought that it was standard practice that you had to give them equity into the company as well. But I know many other founders that have gone a different route where there's not any equity involved, but they have more of kind of not strict, but more of a structure on like what the expectation is, and then maybe working towards equity kind of thing over time or whatnot. So there's so many different ways that you can structure it. I personally, try to advise any first time founders to maybe wait a little bit longer or to at least do what I said, where they kind of stagger it, because I personally don't really think that there's too much benefit in like instantly trying to put everybody in at once and assuming that you're going to get everything that you expected out of it, because that's not reality. Like, I can't wait. I want to continue to be an advisor in other companies as well, because I feel like, there's just so much that we have to give one another. And I've continued to learn so much from my advisors, and they're all wonderful. But you just kind of learn as you grow on the journey that there's sometimes just different wants and needs that come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, as you were speaking, I was like, just catch myself on the thought that like, you're right about this like box, right? You have to fit in if you're a founder, and
Yeah.
especially if you're a founder who would like to be like funded by the investors.
Yep.
They're like giving you this specific checklist, right? But what was like interesting that I've never had that on my checklist, that I had to have the board of advisors.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering like if that's because I'm more on the technical side, or if that's because um, I wasn't even ready to have
Yeah.
anybody on my board. I've never thought about it. I've never like felt that I need to
Yeah.
have somebody at my table, because for me, honestly, I've heard so many scared stories
Yeah.
about how founders had shared their, and again, that's not equity, but rather
Right.
sits, at the table, I mean, the board, right?
Yes.
And the founders couldn't make the decisions they wanted to make.
Yeah.
And that, like, led at the end of the day to the very, very sometimes bad
Yeah.
stuff and things where or founder lost tons of money, or the company, or the even ownership of the
Right.
company. So I've just recently have seen this article, by the way, posted by one of the biggest VCs in the country.
Oh.
Yeah, from Fiat Growth. They're like huge VC company. They're
Uh-huh.
supporting fintech companies, and
Uh-huh.
they were saying basically that it seems to them that in a phase of almost inevitable recession, more and more and more companies aren't ready, and they don't want to build unicorns or
Right.
multi-billion-dollar companies. They want to build $1 million
They want it
companies.
steady, slow and steady.
Yeah, but what they don't definitely want to do is to give away their equity.
Right.
They're more happy, like founders are more happy these days of basically, having 80% of very successful $1 million company rather than 14% of unicorn and being
Yeah.
nobody at your company. Well, you are still the one who has all the responsibility,
Yep.
all the headache, and you've done it for years for basically nothing. And
Yep.
they were like talking about that at this article, that maybe small is new big,
Hmm.
that maybe
That-
at some point of a time VC will be forced to revisit their approaches, because
Yeah.
what they've done, like basically they've jumped right from the COVID and AI hype, right,
Yep.
where they were throwing money at anybody,
Yeah.
right to the mode when they're so scrapey that they are not ready to give, like that they are trying to give 25K for 7% of equity, which is insane. This
Yeah.
is absolutely not okay numbers,
Yeah.
right? So, and it seems like the market at the end of the day gonna regulate itself, because
Right.
founders aren't ready to work with the investors
Yep.
under the same terms and conditions they used to work,
Yeah.
because it's just not going to work for
Well,
for
it's
the
not
founders.
favorable. It's not favorable to the founder or founders, and it's not favorable to most likely the company that they're building and that they've poured everything into. And there's so many companies now that are very community based or, tied to a certain mission or serving or supporting. And oftentimes, I mean, I'm such a people person that I always put people first, which is part of the reason why I never took on any investment, is because as much as I knew that that money would, it's what we need to scale and grow, but at the same time, it just never really fully aligned with our mission and who we are and how we, our community powers our platform. So that was always a struggle for me. Honestly, I should have never switched Spousely to a C-Corp. I think to date, that's my biggest mistake that I've made on this journey, is switching Spousely to a C-Corp, because it caused so much more headache and stress than it's been worth. And LLC was perfectly fine for us. And once again, you don't know what you don't know. So, yeah, I love the idea of that small is the new big, because I know many companies out there that front facing look really big and are growing and have taken on, funds, but underneath the hood, they are definitely not, all sunshine and rainbows, which unfortunately is a bummer, because we see companies getting all this funding and you assume that it's helping continue to move the needle, but at the end of the day, oftentimes it can kind of, I don't know, maybe result in taking some steps back sometimes. So even though Spousely has continued to scale and grow on a bootstrapping budget, like super slow and steady, it's also been really great that we've been able to pour such a strong foundation. So even though, like I said, we're not, the millions and millions that I wish that we were at, which would be great because we'd be making a really big impact in our community, we've continued to do what I believe is the right way for us to grow a platform that our community deserves.
Yeah, you mentioned that that was one of the mistakes, switching from LLC to C Corp. My previous guest was the Robin Grable, the
Yes,
founder
love
of
Rob.
Talents Ascent.
Yeah.
She's amazing. I'm
Yes.
in love. And she mentioned that like she paid so many dummy taxes along the way when
Yeah.
she wasn't ready to, basically she wasn't ready to make that leap of faith into entrepreneurship, but she
Yeah.
didn't know, like, that she
Yeah.
isn't ready, so she had to pay these dummy taxes.
Yeah.
So what was, from your point of view, one of the biggest dummy tax you paid, and what was the biggest win you had along the way so far?
Um, well, I feel like, the win has been we have a lot of great corporate partners. We have a lot of great opportunities. Being a C Corp obviously opens the door to more opportunities in terms of if you want to raise capital and all of that. I will say I really don't have the right answer. I just think that it just depends on where you want. Everybody defines success differently, and I think that that's super important. Um, I think we all constantly get on, we have to be on the fast track and we have to be one of those overnight successes just because it's what we see. But I really do wish that people would challenge themselves a bit more of slowing down and just saying, what does success look like to me and for my company? How do I want this company to be successful? Do I want it to be a lifestyle business? Do I want it to be an impactful business, a full-time business, something that I can sell, something that I can hold on to and it could be in our family forever? Like, those are some important questions that nobody is really helping founders navigate. I feel like it's just the constant, like, fast paced train. It's not like, wait a second, let's actually like peel back some layers, go back to your why. Why did you start your business? And what is your vision for the business? Because I feel like oftentimes, whether we know it at the time or not, we already have a vision for our business well before we even got started. Like, we had the idea and then the vision comes of where we want it to go. But then once we actually start and we're in the startup grind, we get a little clouded on what direction we want to head when we really knew it all along. And that's something that I will continue to kick myself at, is because I never thought Spousely would turn into what it has today. To be honest, when I first launched it, I was like, oh yeah, so cool. Like, we're going to be able to like build something and that's going to make a great impact. I never thought it was going to be able to grow into such an impactful opportunity in so many different areas. Now, when I first launched, there were thoughts in my head of like, oh, we're going to take Etsy on, like, no big deal. We're going to take it on my bootstrapping budget. And then as you get going, you're like, okay, that's wishful thinking. Like, that there's no way, unless I poured everything into raising a ton of capital and I got a bunch of big players behind Spousely. But that's not the fun piece of it for me. That's really not fun. What is fun is the magic that's happening behind the scenes, the magic of the vendors helping one another, the magic of people starting businesses to be on Spousely. Like, there is just so much more than I need to build Spousely to be the next Etsy. And I think when you come to terms with what that looks like, and what success looks like for you, it'll help you navigate those challenges as well as those wins.
Yeah, and I think that you're absolutely right. I've heard a couple of lectures from the founder of the Robin Hood, from the founder of the Superhuman, and all they told that at some point of a time, they started to compare themselves, like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the next, I don't know, Google Mail. I'm
Yeah.
going to be the next something.
Yeah.
And they had to stop themselves pretty
Yep.
hardly to not be the next somebody, but to
Right.
become the first superhuman, become
Yep.
the first and only Robin Hood. So, but you're absolutely right. Because of the grind, because we were being pushed so hard to fit into the box, to fit into this success model, we tend to forget about the fact that maybe we shouldn't be the next somebody. We can
Yeah.
be the very first one.
Yeah.
I don't know, Spousely, right? Or
Yeah.
NanaFund. Doesn't
Yes.
really matter. You have your mission and you started this company for a good reason, because you wanted to make the impact first of all, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you won't have a revenue. That only
Yeah.
means that that's not necessarily the only driver and the only
Right.
goal, right? So
Absolutely. And
that
I've had thoughts, and many people have asked me throughout the journey. They're like, "Have you considered turning Spousely into a nonprofit and going that route?" And early on, I made Spousely for profit for a reason, and it was because I really, really am working so hard to change the narrative behind, we can still do good and we can all empower and support one another, but it can also be something that is for profit too. It doesn't have to always necessarily default into more of the nonprofit route in our space, which there's nothing wrong with it. I was just really trying so hard to fight the uphill battle. And at the end of the day, I do feel like we have been operating more along the lines of a nonprofit than a for-profit, just because, like I said, as a multi-vendor marketplace, the Spousely piece, the Spousely take home is very, very minimal compared to the impact piece, which is what really is the most exciting piece of all of it to me. And so I don't know. I've gone back and forth on it more and more as we are approaching year 5 of like, what does the next stage of Spousely look like? Like, how can I get over the hump? I've been stuck at the hump for about a year now. And it's like, I've got to make changes in order to get it to the next level. And which is why I absolutely love everything that you're building, because I shared with you, offline, is that the funding piece and having access to grants and funds and opportunity it's hard. It is so challenging. And to be able to go to a platform like yours and just know, like, I understand this. This is super easy. This is, I put in this and I have the potential to get this. So like, I wish that there was more opportunity like that along the way of my journey. But now that we are approaching year 5, I will say the pressure is very real. I'm putting the pressure on myself at an extreme new like way than I ever have before, because it is time to say, okay, if we really want Spousely to go here, how can we get it there? And so there's always hard decisions. There's a lot of pivoting. I have an incredible small but mighty team that helps power Spousely on a day-to-day basis, and it has allowed me to kind of come up for air of just really, you know, focusing on what needs to be done. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I know you didn't ask, but I'm sharing.
that's I mean, you're addressing all the questions I wanted to ask. And my
Okay.
next question was like, okay, so 10 years from now, 5 more years from now, what it's going to be? What is
Yeah.
your vision for Spousely? And especially taking into account that you are here and now at that challenging moment. And I'm sure that, like, if and when we're going to talk next time in a year or so, you will, take a good look at this moment of a time and you
Yeah.
will be, oh, I made all the right decisions. That was
Yes.
hard, but we made it. But
Yes.
you always have to have that vision, right? Where you're going to. So in 5 or 10 years from now, where are you going to?
Yeah, so my ultimate goal with Spousely is to align Spousely with the right partner. I truly believe that Spousely is a incredible opportunity to be the arm off of another company that wants to serve and support our community. I think having a marketplace that is B2C like ours really goes hand in hand on all of the entrepreneurial track, whether it's education to starting a business to growing a business to funding a business. Like, it really is an incredible opportunity to put all of that to work through the marketplace. And then there's so much opportunity, as we know, in the B2B space for our community. But I think at the end of the day, I will continue to face an uphill battle on a bootstrapping budget with a growing multi vendor marketplace. That is the genuine, honest answer of where we're at and where we want to go. And so, in order to get to where we want to go, we need to align with the right partner so we can build together and we can create this amazing opportunity for our community to have a little bit of everything, whether they want to sell on a marketplace or they want to do XYZ, whatever it is. I want to do it alongside the right partner. So 5 years, I would hope that we are aligned with that partner. I've actively been having lots of conversations on what that could look like, who would be a right fit, who also sees our community as an opportunity to continue supporting. And that's the path that I would like to stick with. I don't want to raise capital. I don't want to continue to scale spousely alone. I'd love to, do it alongside a like-minded individual or company. And in the next 10 years, if we do get it aligned with the right partner, I would hope to see, thousands and thousands and thousands of impact of businesses that have continued to start, grow, and scale with our community.
Well, yeah, that sounds super interesting. So essentially, it should be something, or it can turn into something B2B to B2C, right? Where
Yeah,
you
like,
are coming into the community and you have this business, but now you have opportunity
correct.
exactly to get funded, to get maybe all of your HR stuff sorted out, right? And also you have the marketplace where you
Yep.
can start to become a vendor right away, right? You
Yeah.
can start to make some money, to get some profit, and what's more important, to get a lot of support from the community right
Yep.
away. But
Absolutely.
are you planning to stick solely to the military and first responders businesses, or are you thinking about also expanding this, I don't know, horizon
Yeah.
or the community?
Absolutely. I've thought about this many times. My thought process probably a year or two ago was, well, if we open up the doors to all small businesses, that really doesn't separate us from, other marketplaces out there. But what truly separates us now is that we have a specific niche community that we're serving and supporting. Although I do believe that there's a ton of power in opening our doors to more of the made in America, supporting American owned businesses, things like that. I think that there's a huge opportunity there. I personally, I don't know, like, international wise, if that would make sense, only because, we've got other marketplaces that are doing it. I still think we have to stay true to our niche while also finding more ways to expand opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. Well, honestly, the main reason why I was asking wasn't about expanding the niche, but rather expanding the geography, because there are a lot
Yeah.
of veterans in Canada, right? For
Yeah.
example, right? Or I don't know, in Europe, in Ukraine, there are gonna be tons of veterans and military spouses, and all of them would love to have that opportunity to get a touch, right, to already existing community
Yeah.
and get support, maybe not only as the business founder, but also as a human being, right? Because
Absolutely.
it is very important to talk to the like-minded people. And what I
Yes.
figured over this time, I'm talking with a lot of veterans, I'm talking with a lot of military spouses from United States, but also I do have obviously friends back from Ukraine who are
Yeah.
currently military spouses, because
Yeah.
like basically somebody from the family is currently serving on the front
Yes.
line, and they are forced to deal with their life, with the family and with the business on their own, while they're being very worried about what is going
Yeah.
on over there. And I assume that all these people would be happy to, again, to have that support and opportunity, at some point of a time, just
Yes.
go to somebody and ask, like, hey, I'm struggling. Can
Yeah.
you help me? Or that's my small win. Let's celebrate together, right? Because community is not necessarily all about, can you help me?
Right.
Sometimes it's also about, like, let's pop up champagne together and let's
Yeah.
celebrate. So yeah, if I'm just wondering if you ever consider to expand the geography,
Yeah.
not necessarily the like the
Yeah.
target
Niche.
audience or the
Yeah.
niche.
Yes, actually, fun fact, I think it was about a year ago now. I actually had an incredible spouse reach out in Australia, and she was asking if we could expand Spousely as a brand to Australia because she knows so many incredible military families there in Australia that have small businesses, and she absolutely loved everything with Spousely and the brand and the marketplace and the community. So I definitely think that there's a ton of opportunity. I think once again, to make that kind of decision to where we could like fully support it and make sure everybody has what they need and has a good understanding of, the different needs of different locations would be alongside the right partner. So 100%. I mean, I'd love to find ways that we can continue to better serve and support small business owners in general, and our community of military and first responder owned businesses throughout different locations too. At the end of the day, I always say when one person serves, the entire family serves too. So finding ways that we can better support one another.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, we tend to forget about that,
Yeah.
right? That maybe because the military spouses do not have the medals on their chest doesn't mean that they didn't have
Yeah.
put a lot of on the table, and
Yeah.
they face tons of pressure, and they need support and understanding exactly as much as
Yep.
anybody else. So yes, I'm here with you to wrap up this amazing time, and thank you so much once again for joining me. What would be your advice for the first time founder, or for the military spouse or veteran who may be sitting and thinking about opening their own company
Yes.
today, in the middle of 2024?
So the best advice that I love giving is just go for it and do not hold yourself back. If you have an idea and if you've got a viable business opportunity, viable meaning you've done your market research, you've explored all the different options of what that would look like and what really it is going to take to get this business off the ground and running. I always say just go for it and do not hold yourself back on the little things. Oftentimes, people will hold themselves back from maybe not knowing how to market, or maybe not having the right budget for it, or not really knowing where to get started. Like, there's so many different factors, but I'm a big believer that if you just take that first leap forward, everything else will continue to fall into place. Because at the end of the day, we cannot read each other's minds, and somebody could be sitting on a really, really, really great business idea
Right.
and they're not taking action on it because they don't think it's possible. So I'm a big believer that we can turn the word impossible into I'm possible.
Yeah. So would you suggest, like, at first maybe to learn a bit, or maybe to figure out somehow whether
Yeah,
like this idea is like viable? what
yeah, I
what
think
what
it's
would be
super.
your advice? Where should I, for example, right, if that would be me, where should I go?
Yeah, I think it's really important to do your market research and to understand the industry a little bit more that you would like to go into. Because for me, I jumped headfirst into the marketplace space. Like, I am talking headfirst. I just remember going to my web developer and being like, this is what I want it to look like. These are all the functions that I need. This is what I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And I never, ever once of my idea of Spousely thought through all of the little details in between that a marketplace runs off of. And to be honest, I do give myself a nice pat on the back because I've met many big marketplaces that are still figuring out some of the key things that I figured out by just throwing the hat on really fast, kind of thing. So, with that being said, really just having a little bit more of an understanding, if you want to get into marketplaces or your e-commerce, or, whatever you're building, an app, or just kind of knowing the basics of what others are saying and doing can be extremely helpful. There's a number of different marketplace platforms that I wish I would have been a part of before I launched Spousely, because then I would have been like, oh, I could have saved myself from going through that pain. But because I did not put myself out there, I just kind of went for it. Um, it was hard. So go for it on the business idea. But first, make sure that you are doing a little research around, is this something that you're willing and wanting to pour a lot of time and potentially money into?
Yeah, basically your life, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All of your hours and side hours and everything. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was such an honor and pleasure. And I really, really hope that like in 5 years from now, we're gonna sit here together and you're gonna share how Spousely become the international company and how now you're making impact worldwide.
Yes, I love it. And I'm super excited for you and everything you're building. And I appreciate you having me.